So we have this word, design, and I'm sure most of you know what it means. And we have this word, service, and I'm pretty sure most of you know what this word means. And we put them next to each other. How do these two things relate? And if we take out the period, what does this term service design actually mean? So before we start, I want to make a comparison between a product and a service and how these two things relate to each other. So Tim Cook from Apple said the lines between hardware, software, and services are blurred or disappearing. So what does this mean? Well, take a product like a hammer. A hammer is something that you have. It's something you might own. It's something that is yours and you can use yourself and isn't necessarily connected to any other specific service. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there might be someone who holds a hammer and does hammering for you as a service, and you don't own anything and you don't do anything for yourself. And that's this dichotomy between the tangible, holdable product and the experiential and intangible service. But there's a whole continuum of things in between that aren't necessarily entirely product or entirely service. Like you might offer a bunch of different types of hammers to perform different types of jobs. Or you might be a hammering advisor who gives expert hammering advice to people who don't quite know what to do, but have their own hammers and just need help. You might have a hammer rental service where people are able to self-serve selecting and using their own hammers. Or you might have the hammering in the cloud service where people log in and download hammers straight to their computer. So these are all different aspects of product and service you can design for. So let's take a look specifically at what it means to design for service. So what does it mean to serve? You can perform a service, provide a service, facilitate, enable, assist somebody, and all of this happens over a period of time. There's a customer benefit to service in where end-to-end experiences are frictionless, cohesive, and designed from the customer's point of view. Well, designing for service for your organization, the benefit there is that you can improve underlying support structures, employee experiences, and end-to-end understanding of what you have. So designing for service is the practical application of design to ensure successful delivery of the customer and organizational benefits. So now let's set a stage of what service can look like. Here we have the actual stage and the auditorium for the Vienna Opera House. And this is where their customers go to have the experience of the opera. And that is a service that the Opera House provides, the opportunity to go and be entertained and delighted by the opera. But behind this stage, you have the backstage. And this is where the crew and the staff and the performers and the lights and the sound, this is where all of that is orchestrated, and it exists to produce that front stage auditorium experience. And the Opera House can't exist on its own without a backstage that produces it. And so a core concept in designing for service and service design is this idea of the front stage, things that are visible to the customer. These are your channels, products, actors, your touch points, interfaces, all the things that the customer, the guest, the user can see. And then you have the backstage. And these are all the things that aren't visible to the customer, like processes and policies, backstage actors like that cast and crew that you can't see, systems and technology. And none of this is visible, but it's felt by the customer because the front stage is only a product of the backstage. And then there's kind of this third, more ephemeral dimension, and that's the behind the scenes. And this is something that design typically isn't involved with. And these are guiding principles, the internal constraints, regulations, legal requirements, organizational structures, business culture. And the behind the scenes is what creates the backstage, which then creates the front stage. And so the behind the scenes is an essential part of designing for service that typically isn't designed consciously. So you have this line of visibility between the front stage experience of the customer, the backstage experience of us and how we produce the front stage, our behind the scenes that happens to make the backstage something that is real, and then the great unknowable customers behind the scenes, which is their lives and their purpose for trying to interact with us, and the things that impact how they're going to interact with the front stage and interact with us. That's different for every single customer that we have. So if we take a look at a front stage experience, we have something like Uber, where their front stage experience is all about calling a ride, getting into the nice black Mercedes S-Class car, having your driver open the door for you. You get in, you ride, maybe check some email, get out at your destination, say goodbye. And then the next time you open your phone, maybe you remember to give them that 5-star rating. But behind the scene of that Uber experience is the backstage, where all the orchestrations of what's going on between requesting a ride, how the driver gets the ride, how the Uber systems and technology pass things back and forth between the phone in the car, the phone that the user has, the systems back at Uber's data centers. And all of this happens backstage, and all this is informed from behind the scenes decisions that the company has made. But you don't have to be a service provider to design for service. You just have to be human, because to serve is human and service is being human. So let's take a look at a human experience. Picture this. You wake up early one morning with one of your best friends and you head down the road towards a place that you've been waiting to go to for weeks. The Service Design Amusement Park with the Super Coaster 5000, the fastest, most extreme roller coaster in the West. You show up and you go through the maze of cars in the parking lot, desperately trying to find somewhere to park after all the hours you spent in the car. You get out and you enter another maze of the big long line of all the people there to get there early to ride the brand new Super Coaster. You bring your ticket that you've been carrying with you all these weeks. That's going to grant you access to the park. They scan it and say, now you are able to enter. You go in, you see all the other things between you and your goal, that the Super Coaster in the background, you see the people kind of sweeping up from the day before, getting other rides ready, putting out the churros and the corn dogs for people to eat as they go. You get into another line waiting for the Super Coaster as you're going to wind through the gates, making your way up to the front where you're loaded 2 by 2 through the cattle stalls into the seats where the metal restraints click down and hold you in so that you can finally experience that thing that you came here to experience in the first place, that ride, down the coaster with your friend, screaming, hands in the air. And afterward, famished from your day, you have some of the fine cuisine that the Service Design Amusement Park offers. Get back in the car, make the long drive home in the middle of the night. And everything that you've done so far culminates in that one goal of that experience. And that is the memory that you have with that $40 picture that the roller coaster takes as you go down it. And that is the service that they performed and provided for you, was this final end experience. So now, as we went through that story, hopefully most of you are counting the actors, the touch points, the policies, the processes, and all the things that made up that human experience. And if not, I'll help deconstruct it a little bit for you by looking at the stage that we just experienced. So first, we're going to call this thing a touch point, and it's a point of interaction between the customer and the service. Then we have an ecosystem, which is a large collection of touch points that are all available to the customer for them to experience. You turn that on its axis a little bit, and now you have channels, and these are the mediums in which touch points and interactions can take place, because not all touch points are like each other. So we have the supercoaster as our main touch point, but it doesn't exist on its own. It's a part of a whole ecosystem of all types of touch points and channels. So you have the old, reliable, nostalgic Ferris wheel. And then you might have the guest services and the concession stand and the first aid and the janitorial crew and the food services and everything that keeps the amusement park running, but isn't necessarily something that draws people in. You have the marketing and the advertising and the things that let people know that you're offering this service and that it's going to be delightful and it's going to be something that they want. And depending on how you look at it, is this a service to the customer, or is this a service to us as the amusement park owners? And then you have the entrance gates, the place where we say, you do not have the thing we need to let you in, but you do have the thing that allows you to come in. And so it kind of performs the service of letting people in, but also keeping other people out. And then, of course, the people, the humans themselves that come to create their experience, as they wind through the park, connecting things, taking all these touch points and assembling their own experience that will pull together like on a string in beads. And this becomes their journey, their experience that they've constructed themselves. So when you have a large ecosystem of all sorts of touch points, they're able to create their own experience and their own journey however they want, each and every time they come through this ecosystem and these touch points that we provide. Now, since we can't necessarily design their experiences, we only set the stage in service of the customer's journey. And with that, we act in service of the customer's needs. And designing for service is how we ensure successful delivery. So let's take a look at a real example that illustrates what I've been talking about so far from my work. And I work for the QuickBooks product and service line for Intuit, and we serve the self-employed and small business owners of the world. So that's what our amusement park might be made up of. So I'm going to take you through the process of this case study of how we applied this design for service mentality and methodology through these kind of 4 general phases. The first was defining a big opportunity space, then onto service blueprinting, then identifying strategic and tactical fixes, and then finally taking action. So our big space was company billing. And this was a true ecosystem spanning customer experience that accounted for 20% of our customer support volume. Since every customer is billed and transact money with us for products and services, it's no wonder that that's one of our top ways we have to support the customer. So we had a vision of changing that, where a great billing experience is a key element to the end-to-end QuickBooks experience. The problem is that billing was impersonal and internally focused and very mechanical. Nobody wants a bill. Nobody wants to talk about a bill. So we want to get rid of the bill and come up with something a little more human. And so how we looked at it when we said, well, we're not going to treat it like billing, we're going to treat it like a relationship. So we said, our customer subscription is an ongoing relationship that gives access to what helps make them successful and lets us ensure we can continue to act in service to them. It's a whole lot different. So now it's not that you're being billed, it's that we have a relationship with you through a subscription that allows us to serve you and help make you successful. So now we needed to see this entire subscription stage, which is much more than just the process of being billed. So I designed this relationship architecture that takes a look at the front stage, backstage, and behind the scenes of a subscription process. So we kind of had the front stage of what the customer experiences through the various events that they go through, the key touch points they interact with, our guiding principles of how we want each phase to feel. We have our own backstage and our behind the scenes of how we are going to ensure the delivery of this service, our partners, our technology, our policies. And so we had, this overview of the stage of what it's comprised of, but didn't know exactly what to do with it. Because all of this is just a big cross-silo ecosystem spanning chain of events over time. A subscription is not a thing. It's not a product. You can't build it. You can't hold it. You can't drop it on your foot like a hammer. So our first goal was to really nail the basics and find the biggest potential for overlap of irritation, pain, and failure in all of these different ways customers can construct, their own stages through a subscription experience. So first, we had to unlock the front stage, backstage, and behind the scenes through the blueprinting. So that practical service blueprint is a co-created process that uncovers the true end-to-end surface-to-core reality of a customer experience and the reality of the internal organization experience and structure. Well, to do that, you have to put together co-creative, cross-functional working teams that can get together and account for and document that internal organizational experience and structure from disparate parts and silos, or whatever they're called, that don't necessarily have day-to-day communication, but are each a part of the service delivery, but aren't necessarily acting in a holistic way. And so the team that's gathered in these sessions has to represent that holistic service from the customer's point of view and not the internal structure of our company. So we get together and built blueprints of our top scenarios and use cases that had the biggest chance of overlap between what are a lot of the customers going through a subscription going to encounter, and what are the ways that we, how do we deliver that organizationally? And so that's when we get to this practical service blueprint that reveals the true end-to-end and surface-to-core nature of each scenario. And we build a whole bunch of these to kind of cover all the bases of what actually happens in all of these different subscription stages that the customers build as they go through all these various stories and journeys. And these are comprised of all these details that's never really captured in a customer journey. So we're looking at things like the actors and the systems. We're looking at data callouts and metrics for each step, policies that dictate is what's going on in each of those steps. And then the critical moments, irritations, and failures where things break down and cause the bad experiences, and our ideas and aha moments of finally seeing it end to end. We now have something to reference. And you get these big, visceral, visual artifacts that can be put up and seen and annotated and modified and gathered around with all the stakeholders there after you've created it, and let them typically see these end-to-end surface-to-core experiences for the first time. This is the first time that something like a subscription has existed in reality. Before, it was just a concept and a collection of interactions. Now it's closer to being a thing that you can see. And we have multiple different big printouts like this of the subscription experiences that reveal what's going on at a high level end to end, but also paradoxically at the same time, a great deal of detail in each step inside of the high level view. So now, using this front stage, backstage model again, we can see all the visible to the customer elements like the marketing, what happens in the sign up, what emails do they get, etc. The backstage, that's not visible to the customer, all the technology, the API, the care agent processes and scripts. all those things that produce the front stage. And then again, the thing that typically doesn't get design treatment and isn't necessarily designed in a way to build that backstage, to build the front stage, is behind the scenes. Things like finance and pricing policies, how we define our lineup, legal requirements, product roadmaps that teams aren't aware of, leadership vision that's helping direct things one certain way that just kind of informs the backstage on its own. So this practical service blueprint, it's not a view of how it was designed. It's the view of how it was delivered. And by seeing how it was delivered, you can move on to finding the strategic themes and tactical fixes of that end-to-end surface to core view. And now that you have this view, you can do what I call the root cause analysis and remediation, taking the deep dive into the service blueprints, those tangible things that now represent the intangible nature of the service, and look for true upstream and downstream cause and effect, where teams can now more easily pull out tactical just go do items, as well as strategic themes that will need bigger vision shifts to change the way the service is delivered. So you end up with kind of this simplified visualization of all the places that we can impact this larger intangible journey to kind of have a cohesive, internal narrative of how we want to impact the experience. And all of these different teams that typically aren't, we're not built together in one gigantic, multi-hundred person team. They all have a shared artifact and a shared understanding now that lets them see it all at once and spread across the teams and act as an ecosystem, which is the difference between thinking end-to-end versus acting end-to-end. And now that we can act end-to-end, we can take all of these points, all of these things we've discovered upstream and downstream, and created this holistic plan of just go do fixes and tactical or strategic vision shifts, and make things with those teams and kind of deploy opportunities and solutions across the ecosystem, synchronized together instead of just working on one-off solutions. And this activates the organization by creating something that's truly customer-backed, a visceral shared artifact, silo-busting and co-creative. It gives it the first time seeing it effect, which is what people say when they look at the blueprint and go, this is the first time I'm seeing the end-to-end experience that I've been working on for years with all these other teams, and generates those actionable insights in just a matter of hours, giving us now that view of our amusement park and all the stages that we have set for the customer. And now that you've seen how I did it, can you see all the stages that you have set in your organization and with your experiences, and how you have created all these things that could be lined up by the customer in pretty much any way that they choose? What are you going to do with it? So here are my predictions for what I think or what I hope is going to happen in the near future regarding service design and how we design for service. Prediction 1, the medium of your brand will become irrelevant. The only thing customers will attach to your name will be the service you provide them. Touchpoint design will not be enough to differentiate. Differentiation will come through the relationship you have with your customers and how you serve them over time. Holistic experiences require holistic organizations. What you produce mirrors how you are organized. Cross-silo coordination will be the key to delivering outcomes. Customers adopt more fluid expectations. They will expect quality services to feel the same across categories and contexts. Employee experience will become a design priority. Design thinking will be applied to how experiences are produced and how services are delivered internally. Finally, building service design capacity will be essential. Service design is a much needed tool for companies to better design and deliver exceptional customer experiences. So now, to act in service. Remember, what you make is not who you are. What you provide is not who you are. Your branding is not who you are. How you serve is who you are.